Have you ever looked at something so small that it seemed completely worthless? Maybe an old coin, a broken pen, or even a tiny red paperclip. Most of us would throw it away without thinking twice. But one man looked at a simple red paperclip and saw something no one else could see. Not a piece of metal, but the beginning of an impossible dream. People laughed at his idea. His friends thought he was joking. After all, how could anyone turn a paperclip into a house? It sounded crazy. It sounded impossible. But sometimes the craziest ideas create the greatest stories. This is the incredible true story of Kyle McDonald, the man who proved that one tiny paperclip, a little creativity, how a tiny red paperclip became a house. The incredible true story of Kyle McDonald. Have you ever looked at something so small and so ordinary that you couldn't imagine it changing your life? Maybe an old coin in your pocket, maybe a broken watch sitting in a drawer, or maybe a tiny red paperclip. Most people would never look twice at a paperclip. It holds papers together. That's all. It costs almost nothing, and if you lose one, you probably won't even notice. But in 2005, one man looked at a simple red paperclip and asked himself a question that sounded completely ridiculous. Could I trade this paperclip for a house? Anyone hearing that question would probably laugh. A paperclip is worth only a few cents. A house is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The gap between those two things seemed impossible to cross. But Kyle McDonald wasn't thinking like everyone else. He believed that every object has a different value to different people. Something that means nothing to one person could be exactly what another person is looking for. That single idea started one of the most fascinating trading adventures ever recorded. Kyle lived in Canada. Like many young adults, he dreamed of owning his own home. But buying a house wasn't realistic. He didn't have enough money, and saving for years didn't sound exciting. Instead of waiting for the perfect opportunity, he decided to create one. He placed a message on the internet offering to trade his red paperclip for anything slightly better. It sounded like a joke. Most people ignored the advertisement. Some thought he was trying to get attention. Others simply couldn't understand why anyone would trade for a paperclip. Then something unexpected happened. A woman contacted him. She owned a fish-shaped pen. To her, the red paperclip was more interesting than the pen, so they made the trade. Kyle's paperclip was gone. Now he owned a fish-shaped pen. To an outsider, it looked like almost no progress had been made. A paperclip had become a pen. Who cared? But Kyle cared, because the first trade proved something important. Someone had believed in the idea, and if one person did, maybe another would too. With new confidence, Kyle listed the pen online. Soon, another person offered a handmade doorknob. Again, Kyle accepted. The doorknob became a camping stove. The camping stove became a generator. The generator became something even bigger. Trade after trade, the value slowly increased. Nothing happened overnight. There were no magical shortcuts. Each exchange required patience. Each trade required conversations, planning, traveling, and convincing strangers that the exchange made sense for both sides. As the story spread across Canada, newspapers began writing about the unusual challenge. Television stations wanted interviews. Radio hosts invited Kyle to tell his story. People became fascinated, not because of the objects, because of the adventure. Many people wanted to become part of history. Some weren't interested in what Kyle owned. They simply wanted to say, I was one of the people who traded with the man carrying the red paperclip. Every new trade attracted even more attention. Every article brought new offers. Every interview introduced Kyle to thousands of new people. His journey became bigger than the objects themselves. It became a story about creativity, about persistence, about refusing to accept that something was impossible. One of the most surprising moments came when Kyle managed to trade for a role in a Hollywood movie. Imagine explaining that to someone. A paperclip had slowly turned into a chance to appear in a film. Only a few months earlier, nobody had believed he would complete even his second trade. Now Hollywood was involved. Still, Kyle hadn't forgotten his original dream. He wasn't trying to become famous, he wanted a house. The adventure continued, trade after trade, city after city, meeting strangers, building trust, finding opportunities where nobody else could see them. Then, after 14 trades, everything changed. The town of Kipling, Saskatchewan, heard about Kyle's incredible challenge. The people there realized this unusual story could bring attention to their community. They offered Kyle something unbelievable, a real house. In exchange, Kyle traded away the movie role he had received earlier. Just like that, the challenge was complete. A tiny red paperclip had become a house. The impossible had happened. People around the world couldn't believe it. Many called it luck. But luck alone cannot explain 14 successful trades. Luck doesn't explain the courage to contact strangers. Luck doesn't explain driving long distances for a single exchange. Luck doesn't explain believing in an idea after dozens of people reject it. Kyle succeeded because he understood something most people never think about. Value is personal. The most expensive item isn't always the most valuable. Sometimes the right object simply needs to reach the right person. A paperclip wasn't valuable because of its price. It became valuable because of the opportunity it created. Years later, people still talk about Kyle McDonald's adventure, not because everyone wants to trade paperclips, but because his story reminds us that great achievements often begin with very small steps. Many dreams seem impossible when we focus only on the beginning. A paperclip doesn't look like a house. A single page doesn't look like a book. One workout doesn't look like a healthy body. One English lesson doesn't sound like fluency. But every great success starts somewhere. Kyle McDonald proved that extraordinary journeys don't always begin with extraordinary resources. Sometimes they begin with an ordinary object, an unusual idea, and the courage to take the very first step.